So as I was praying and reflecting this week, I ran across a short reflection that I found very interesting. It's entitled, An Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault, and it still takes me a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. And chapter 5, I walk down another street. And the reality of who we are as people of faith and our faith journey is that we have chosen a very clear path, a different way of walking in this world. And the path we have chosen is to follow in the very footsteps of Jesus Christ. We have intentionally chosen to be a disciple of Jesus Christ because through our own experience of the love and mercy of the redeeming grace we have experienced through Christ's life, we know that's the source of life. That's the very foundation upon which we build our life. Lent is that season, that time when we seek to get back to the very basics in our life, right? Lent is the time when we seek to get back to the very basics in our life. And today we hear proclaimed that beautiful Exodus passage about the 10 Commandments. And really, if you stop to think about what the 10 Commandments are, they're about how we live our life of faith. And if you ever want to do a checkout about how you're doing living that faith, it's great to reflect about the 10 Commandments and saying, so how well am I doing this? And if you look at what the 10 Commandments are, it starts with the fact that God gave us those 2 tablets with those 10 Commandments on. And the first tablet was the first 3 commandments, and they all had to do with our relationship with God. And these are the first and foremost of the commandments. Why? Because that is that very connection to the source of life, right? Unless we have that connection to the source of life, we're not going to be able to understand the path we're going to take. We're not going to be able to experience the grace, the mercy we need to walk in faith and to avoid the pitfalls, right? To avoid those deep holes that imprison and ensnare us. And the first commandment then is quite simple. I am the Lord your God. You'll have no other God beside me. Now don't make this too simple. God's not jealous. God's not worried about us worshiping something else. God is telling us something very clearly, that you need clarity in your life. That we have to have that clear sense of who we are and what we're about. And that purpose, that meaning for our existence comes from that understanding of who we are as children of God. That purpose and meaning, that clarity that we have to have in order to know what path we need to take is given to us by God. And without that connection, right? Without that clarity in our life, that's when we become lost and confused. That's when we become imprisoned in those deep holes and can't find our way out. And we wonder why we're here and how we got here. But it's because we're not connected to the very source of life. And it goes on to talk in those commandments about how we strengthen that connection and grow in that connection. And unless we have this strong relationship with God, that's when our lives fall apart. It is in the clarity of sense of purpose and mission that comes from our connection to the source of life that we are able to have the light we need so we understand the path we are to take in our life. As we get back to the basics then, it really is about understanding how we need to strengthen that connection in our relationship to God. And in specific, how we grow in our relationship with Jesus Christ, right? The cornerstone. He is the foundation upon which we build everything else. And if that's strong, everything else in our life works and works well. And as we walk into Lent then, it is about strengthening that connection. And sometimes it's about recharging ourselves, right? Recharging ourselves about what is important. And sometimes there might be parts of our life that it is about even surrendering in the first place, returning to that clarity of purpose and mission of our journey. And then the second tablet is the other 7 commandments, and they're all about our relationships with each other. If we're not doing the first, the second is absolutely impossible, right? But because it is it is in the connection to the source of life that we find the strength and the grace we need to have those right relationships with those we encounter along the way. And each of those commandments speak to how we walk with one another, how we treat with one another, and how we understand ourselves and our brothers and sisters in this world. We come to know through that clarity, through that connection of our sense of who we are as children of God and the sacredness of the life that God created. And we have that same sense, we grow in that same sense of this is not only true for us, but it's true for every human being we encounter. And the challenge we face in our world now, especially now, is this growing sense of indifference to life. This absolutely horrifying, growing sense of indifference to life. Why do we treat one another so badly? Because we've lost a sense of the sacredness of the life that God has created. We lost a sense of clarity. We've disconnected from the source of life, and in that disconnection, we find ourselves in darkness, and in that darkness, the evil begins to control and destroy. And as we look at those commandments, and as we speak about how we treat one another and how we respond to one another, each of those commandments speak then in clarity to how we respect and honor life from its moment of conception to its moment of natural death. One other thought as we look at our relationship with each other is this huge growing trend. And one of the growing evils in our world is how we bear witness to one another, right? So that commandment, how you do not bear false witness against your neighbor. And you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking especially about social media now, right? And in our social media, it has been very easy to anonymously attack and destroy others, to put messages out there that are absolutely untrue, and they seek to do nothing but to tear down and destroy. Remember, the gift of grace and love that we ourselves have received through the redeeming mercy of God is that enhancement of life, that resurrection to new life and to new hope. And in our relationship with each other, it is about enhancing the life of those we encounter. Or in other words, do we raise up or do we tear down and do we destroy? So when we're walking with each other, when we're talking about each other, when we're responding to each other, there's two really good questions to always ask ourselves before we say anything about another person, right? The first question is this: why am I saying it, right? If I'm saying something aloud about one of my brothers or sisters in this world, why am I saying it? Am I saying it to enhance, to raise up, to give life? Or am I saying it to tear down, to destroy, to belittle? And the second question we ask ourselves is, when I say something about someone, is what I'm saying true? And that's important. Is what I'm saying true? Is it my perception? Is it something I've heard? Is it a feeling I have? Or is it true? We gather today on this third Sunday of our Lenten journey, and we are reminded to get back to the basics. That our life is built upon the cornerstone of Jesus Christ. And that is the foundation of who we are. That's what gives us clarity. That's what gives us purpose and meaning. That's what helps us come to know without any shadow of doubt who we are and the sacredness of the life that God has created within each and every one of us. So we simply pray for the courage to continue to grow in that relationship, in that connection to the source of life. Otherwise, right, we find ourselves walking down the same street, falling in the same pit. So the question is, are we going to walk down another street?